Hello everybody, my name is Richard. I'm the violin practice partner. And today I want to talk about tuning your violin. Somebody moved my background back there so it's not in the same position anyway. But before we talk about tuning the violin, I want to talk about applying rosin to the bow. So, now if you remember in the last video, which was the first video, I showed you the difference between a bow that has rosin and a bow that does not have rosins. But just to remind you, let me see if we can, well, before I do that, let me just add some rosin to this bow, which would be typically how you would rosin a bow after it's been rosin the first time you practice, and hey, you want to put more rosin on it. Again, make sure you cover this metal part, this piece of metal right here on the end. You want to cover that so the rosin doesn't hit it. You'll chip the rosin. So it's better that it bump against your thumb. And just a little bit like that, a little bit on the tip, and then just maybe 3 or 4 times like that should be sufficient. And you don't have to do that every time, depending on how much you practice. If you just practice about an hour a day, you do this a couple times a week, that's probably good enough. Now, so you can see the difference. Again, the bow that I just added rosin to, you can see that it's a white. It looks white compared to the other one. The other one is more yellow looking. So now we're gonna add rosin for the very first time to this bow. And it doesn't really take all that long, but that's what you're gonna look for. You're gonna look for the white. You're gonna watch for it to turn white. You want to tighten. The bow's a little bit loose right there, so we want to tighten it up. And I noticed that this particular bow is a little more of a gap on this one than the other one, but that's all right. I mean, that's just how it is. So now we're going to cover this up. We're going to cover that up, and then so we can bump it against our finger right there without bumping and just rub it in there. Now, you can still see where mine's kind of scratched up a little bit. I just used a fingernail file. You can use an emery board, sandpaper, whatever you have, and just scratch it up like that right there. Scratch the shiny surface off. Otherwise, you got to work through that shiny surface. I scratched it off, so I didn't have to worry about that. It only took me a couple of minutes actually to get some rosin on the bow. And it's already, you can already see it. I don't know if you can see it in here because of the light, but you can actually see it. It's starting to turn white right here on this end a little bit. And it's a little bit hard to see in that, I can tell, but it is turning white. And you just want to scrub it in there. Just really rub it in. Rub it in there like that. And then you can come up to the tip end. Now we have a broke hair on this one. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull that broke hair out of the way. And just break it off, and I'll cut it off with a pair of scissors. Lay it around. And we're just going to work this in here. And again, I can already see it's turning white on the tip. You just hold it however you need to hold it to make it work. I don't know if you can, no, the light, well, there you can see a little bit. You can see how it's turning white, and then it's yellow back here. So you can see a little bit of difference in that. And then just run a couple of run it full length a few times, like this. It still almost acts like that's not tight enough. I've got broken hair in this one. I did not have any broken hair in the other one, but a couple of broken hairs is not going to hurt the way it plays. But I don't want to over tighten it either. We'll come back down, work this in a little bit. So it's only been 6 minutes. Well, 6.5 minutes. But about 6 minutes working on the bow. Doesn't take that much. And then after we get some of it in here, we can do a little test. It still looks like it needs more. But let's give it a little test now and just see what happens. Oh, I meant to show you again what happens when you try to play with a bow that has no rosin, but we can test it and see if it has enough. Just simply, gotta try to remember to get a good bow hold here like you're supposed to. And just see if we get any. Now you hear that bouncing? That all has to do with learning control in the bow. And my finger is locked. There it is. Okay, that's going to take some practice when you get up in here and on the end. But that's playing okay. And it's less rosin than the other one, so I may have actually had more than what I need on the first one, because this one is playing fine and there's not as much rosin coming off, which is a good sign. So I think maybe this was done better. But just that quickly, 6 minutes, and you have a rosined bow. So that's good. I think I'm going to play with the other one. I got to trim some horsehair off of this one. So we'll put that one back in there. Now, we're really not going to play today. I do want to talk for a couple of minutes about tuning the violin. I have a chromatic tuner that came with this violin, with this particular package that I purchased, or actually that my parents purchased on my behalf for Christmas. And let me show this to you. It's a Cecilio, a metronome inside, and you can tell when you play a note, you can see the little needle inside there. Let me see if we can get it to move right here, and you will watch the needle. This is the D string. We're a little flat on the D string, okay? So use the fine tuner over here on the D string. And tighten it just a little bit. We're just going to tighten the D string fine tuner just a little bit. And then we're going to come back and we're going to try to hit that D string again, just so you can see what's happening here. Now, I didn't really move that much, and I just banged the camera, but that's okay. I'm trying to do everything with only one hand. There, I got a hold of it a little bit better. You're actually supposed to do this with the bow, but I'm going to doing it by plucking it for now, just so I want you to see how the meter itself works. Now you see how it hit the green? Well, it only hit the green for a second, but it hit the green. So that means we're getting closer. Let's try one more time here and see what we got. Let's try a different string. The A. Now this one I'm going to nudge just a little bit using the peg, which you got to be careful with the peg. I just barely moved it. You just barely turned it a touch right there. And let's see what happens. Let's see what happens with the A. Too much. It went too much, but that's okay. And I just barely nudged it. So we can back it back out a little bit. It's still just a hair high. So I'm going to use the peg and back it off just a little touch again, then use the fine tuner to bring it back up if I need to. Yeah. Okay, see that dropped down to a G, which I thought it might, but my fine tuner is like way out. So I'll bring the fine tuner back in, and now we'll see where it's at. Let's see where it's at. Okay, we can bring it up some more. It's a little more tricky to do when you're holding the tuner in your hand. But that's all right. It's a learning process here. It's still down just a little bit. I made it think that it moved up. I don't know. Maybe it'll think it did. They're very sensitive. Oh, that's closer. Now we're closer. So, now that brought it into the center, so that's an A. You want to tune your A string first. The first time I tuned this, it took me a while going back and forth string to string, because when you tune, you start with the A, then you tune the D, G, E, or, you know, that's how I did it. And then I had to go back to the A. And when I went back to the A and got it right, then the D was out again. So it took me a while going through it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the strings are new, so they're going to stretch out a little bit. So quite often you're having to, excuse me, quite often you're having to go back and retune. So you always want to check the tune. Another thing is, about tuning, especially when you first get your violin, or perhaps you've been traveling, you take it around, you want to check the bridge. You want to make sure that the bridge sits square with the body of the violin, and it should be lined up. Now, I'm going to try to hold this where you can see the notches a little bit. They're kind of hard to see, but if you look right here, you'll see this little notch. This is called an F slot. There's an F slot on each side. And you'll see these two little notches right here. If I move it around in the light, you'll be able to catch a glimpse of those two notches. There's one here, and there's one offset right here. And this bridge should line up between the two inside notches. It should run parallel across that. It should be perpendicular with the bridge. So I'll come back and make another video, and we'll wrap this up. I'm being paged to take care of something else. So I appreciate you watching. Subscribe, and we'll talk more about this in the next video. God bless you. Thank you. Bye.